Safety is a big concern at the MBTA right now. A series of crashes, derailments, and even a passenger death prompted the Federal Transit Administration to launch a top-to-bottom safety review of the T in April. The FTA's report isn't due until August, but the agency saw a need on June 15th to issue 5 directives to the T to address immediate concerns, including lagging maintenance and engineering work, and overworked staff in the Subway Operations Control Center, employee safety recertifications, and the development of standards for handling vehicles under repair. The safety issue has attracted a lot of attention locally, but the state's congressional delegation hasn't weighed in much so far. Our guest today, Congressman Stephen Lynch, a member of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, can remedy that. Welcome to the podcast, Congressman.
Thank you, Bruce. Good to be with you. And this is certainly a timely topic, and I'm happy to participate. So thank you.
Well, I thank you. And just maybe we start off with what's your overall reaction to what the Federal Transit Administration is doing and what they've uncovered so far?
Well, initially, I was concerned more from the ridership aspect of this in terms of we were informed as a result of the FTA, the Federal Transit Administration's special directives. They ordered in part that the MBTA had to deal with their staffing problem in a way that would require them to lower service. So in real terms, it meant that the trains on the blue, the orange, and red line would experience about a 4-minute delay between trains, as opposed to what the existing service was experiencing. So, as someone who rides the T on occasion, and certainly I use the Metro quite a bit in DC, you add 4 minutes, and that puts a lot more people into the station, and you end up having trains come into the station full. And so you have to wait for several trains before you actually are able to get on a train. So 4 minutes sounds like, just a small increment, but it makes a big difference. So I was concerned about that. We're trying to get more people to use rapid transit. And I thought from that aspect, this change was not helpful. However, I did ask for a joint, when we heard that, I asked for a joint meeting between myself, the FTA, and the MBTA. And the FTA explained that the reason for their special directive was that the dispatchers were being overloaded. So there were some dispatchers that on a regular basis were working 16-hour shifts, occasionally a 20-hour shift, because there were insufficient numbers of dispatchers to handle the flow of trains. So they operate like the air traffic controllers do in the air. This is on rail. And right now we have so few dispatchers that the FTA said you cannot have a person working regular overtime like that. Their efficiency and their awareness and their performance will suffer, and that could end up in more incidents. They actually thought that some of the previous incidents were a result of overworked staff, and so we're asking to lower the workload on those dispatchers. So we came up with an agreement at that meeting to meet again a week later and to explore some solutions that might allow us to increase the number of dispatchers that are available on those shifts. One of them is actually being acted on today. It came from a meeting. I invited the union representatives from both the dispatchers union and local 589 who have a reserve group that can be put to work as dispatchers. So one of the solutions, which I thought was creative, was that the local 589 would adjust their retirement language in their pension plan to allow dispatchers that had recently retired and who are no longer available to come back onto the service without jeopardizing their pension benefits. Look, becoming a dispatcher takes anywhere to between 3 and 4 months, and that would not help us in the long term to just bring in new people and train them, although that is also going on. But to have immediate impact, we had to bring people on quite soon. So the MBTA agreed to offer an incentive program. The unions agreed to relax the language of their pension plans to eliminate the penalties that would have been applied to these dispatchers coming back on the payroll. So that's in play right now, and we're working through that language. Oddly enough, or maybe not oddly enough, the language change to allow us to do that has to be approved by the membership of Local 589. So it has to be approved at a union meeting, and so that caused some delay. But that's our plan right now to address that short-term problem.
So it sounds like that could help, as you say, address the short-term problem, which might allow the T get back to full service levels before the Labor Day. I think they're originally planning to go through the end of the summer that way, and now they might be able to do it quicker than that.
Perhaps. So it all depends how much
step forward,
how much uptake. Yeah, how many people step up and agree to do that? They're talking about a $10,000 incentive for members to come off of retirement and go back to work as dispatchers. So we'll see how many people are attracted by that incentive.
Did you hear a number about how many are in the potential pool that could come back if they can be lured back?
Well, the whole reserve pool was, I think, 35 individuals. So if they had 35 people in the pool entirely, that would solve things. So they're also reaching out to some of the heavy rail operators to see if there are certified dispatchers in the heavy rail area that would like to come on board. And so they're sort of, not cannibalizing, but I get the sense that there are not a lot of heavy rail dispatchers, but they may have a retirement pool that we could work with as well. So they're trying a lot of things at once. And they're also, Local 589, as I said before, has the reservoir where those individuals who are actually conductors on trains are in the best position to learn and understand what the job of a dispatcher requires. The men and women who are actually running the trains are the people who seem to do the best at this job. So we're trying to recruit out of that pool to make a ready reserve from Local 589, who would then become members of Local 600, the dispatchers union, and put that flow of employees back into place. But COVID took a lot of people out of play, especially those drivers, those conductors who would have to deal with the public and other personnel who were on the T property, because it's daily contact with the public. There was a lot of stress in that environment, as you may understand. And so people took their retirements. And so that was an unexpected loss of personnel that caught the MBTA unaware and unprepared.
And in these meetings, what's been the atmosphere? Everybody rolling their sleeves up, trying to get the job done, or is there? What's your sense?
Yeah, I have to say people understand. People understand, and there's been nothing but cooperation between. It's more of how do we iron out these details? Like with the union, they explained that their position and their pension plan would not allow that without penalties being incurred, and so. Between discussions with Steve Poftak over at the MBTA and Jim Evers, who is the president of the Local 589, and President McDonald, who's over at Local 600, there's been pretty good cooperation. And I had discussions with the governor as well on this. So it seems like we're all rowing in the same direction.
And you're rightly so, trying to address the immediate problem here to get service back to full levels. But step back a second, if you could. And so what seems, these directives are sort of the initial, immediate things that can be done. But are you concerned about safety at the T? In your talks with the FTA, are you Are you worried? Because that could also have a ripple impact on ridership in a maybe a broader long-term sense. In the big picture, how concerned are you?
I'm worried. I'm worried. As you mentioned in your opening remarks, we've had a number of incidents that could have been attributable to working people overtime or having staffing shortages. So yeah, I'm very, very concerned. Look, I've had, 3 meetings in the last week on this, which is, all on this issue. The funding has been put in place, but I think there's a lag between the time we approved that money, even though it was emergency funding, and the legislature, the governor, and the agency actually deploying some of those resources to deal with the problem. So, I am concerned, but fortunately, a lot of people are concerned, and we seem to be working together trying to eliminate or mitigate the danger here. But it does exist, and so, I mean, that's why the FTA said, lower your service, because we did not have the personnel in place, to deal with the flow and to adequately protect the ridership. And if you lay on top of that the accident that we had over at Haymarket with the demolition of the garage, and then the damage to the tunnels below, we've got problems there. We had a lot of projects that were either finishing up or in progress, where we already had to bus people around certain stations. That's going on the Red Line in Quincy, and we're trying to get all that. That's made great progress, but we're still not finished. So we had a lot of balls in the air when all of this started to happen.
And one little detail I just want to be clear about. It was always a little unclear to me whether the FTA said you've got your staffing levels in the operations control center, they're being overworked. You've got to address that. You sort of portrayed it, though. They said that, and then this is the way to do it. Or did the T come up with that solution? Do you have a sense of that?
The FTA is the one that said you've got staffing problems here, and we think they're connected to some of the incidents that you've had here. They didn't single out individual incidents, but they said collectively in the aggregate, we think you've got people overworked. And they mentioned the number of hours that some people were working and the number of people that were available to do those jobs. So the FTA definitely said you got to reduce service and deal with that issue. Okay. I think it was really the T that said, okay, this is how we've done it. But I did ask the FTA. I brought up a couple of other cities where we had problems, and I said, what did you do then? And they did say, well, they increased the pool of people and reduced the number of the flow of the frequency of trains to try to deal with that backlog. So it was an open discussion, but the T and the unions were quite active in that discussion. I don't want to try to compartmentalize who said what, but I think it was collective cooperation between the parties.
So the other thing I wanted to talk with you about, this must be incredibly frustrating for you in a way, because back in March 2021, Congress had funneled a lot of money to the T and other transit authorities around the country. And just to set it for our listeners, the T at that time was scaling back service to more better fit, as it thought, the ridership at that time. And also, there was a plan, actually, I think they followed through on it initially, to furlough about 40 conductors on the commuter rail system, which was really hard hit. Ridership was way down. You and the congressional delegation spoke out pretty forcefully that you're getting all this money. We didn't expect you to cut service and start laying people off. We want to see service back to regular levels and don't lay anybody off. And that's what the T did. They responded in sort of reverse course. But now we seem to be back in that spot for one reason or another. We're lowering service, and we're not laying people off, but we're also looking ahead to a year or so out where we're going to as they say, the T is going to hit fall off a fiscal cliff, and its operating budget is going to be in deficit. What are you thinking about that? I mean, that must be incredibly frustrating for you.
It is. It is. I don't deny that. There had been a large miscommunication. We gave them $1 billion, and then they told me that they were going to lay off, I think it was closer to 50 conductors on commuter rail. So we had a come to Jesus meeting on that, and they reversed course, which I thought was wise on their part. Remember, the whole idea about the money at that time was, with the CARES Act and the Infrastructure Act, was to keep the process going here and keep commerce going, but for the lack of revenue from fares and also tax revenue in general from business activities. So they were doing something that flew in the face of congressional intent. They, like I say, they did reverse course, and I give the governor credit on that. But now it seems to be a question of dexterity and competence in dealing with the current situation. And I'll give you a good example. For many, many years, there were thousands of employees on the waiting list, not employees, applicants on the waiting list to go to work at the T. And so we had a human resources group there that was dealing with a situation of picking and choosing and putting people on the payroll very slowly, quite frankly, and it took forever. But they always had a couple of thousand people who wanted to work on the T. Right now, we have 600 vacancies at the T, and we don't have a long list of people that are applying. We have very few, believe it or not. So they are still operating, I think, under the old system, the old presumption, where there was a ready pool of people, and they didn't have to proactively go out and seek skilled workers, electricians, plumbers, carpenters, bricklayers, ironworkers, or bus drivers, people with commercial driver's licenses who they can put right to work. So there's a gap there. And also, I think in their planning department and putting initiatives forward, doing over stations, there is a directive from the governor's office and the Secretary of Transportation, to do over stations, to work on additional lines, and to buy new vehicles, buy new trains, buy new buses. There's a lag between the funding being given to the MBTA for this purpose and actually things happening. There's a lag there, and it is, I think, at the root of some of our problems.
There's also, though, the reason I sort of think this has to be frustrating, and it's a tough dynamic. What you addressed in 2021 was the T sort of, I guess, squirreling away money while they were sort of reducing service and laying off some workers, and they ended that. But now here we are, 2022, middle of 2022, and again, the T is looking ahead. The federal money will run out that they've been using to balance their budget in this coming fiscal year, and so subsequent to that, they're looking, unless ridership rebounds significantly, they're looking at deficits in the future, and so it's sort of the federal money has delayed this day, what I tend to call a day of reckoning, but it hasn't blocked it. Does the legislature here need to step up with more money, or what's your sense of what needs to be done to address sort of a looming problem coming up in about a year?
Well, you would hope that we would get to a point of equilibrium where that deficit is manageable from administration to administration. We will have a new governor, in a little bit. We might have a new Secretary of Transportation, and perhaps a new general manager at the T. I'm not quite sure of that, but they may be thinking, look, we just got to get through our portion of this. I'm not ascribing that. I'm just saying that's a possibility. But I do agree that there's a larger deficit, and they're using one-time infusions of cash to deal with, their continual operations, and that is, that's just got disaster written all over it. We did make a commitment to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for $9.5 billion over the next 5 years, which is a huge amount of money. If you think about the big dig, I think we gave them $16 billion over 20 years. That was back in the day. But so this is a real infusion. And, you just hope that there's thoughtful planning to deploy those resources in a way that will get the MBTA out of its fix. And we've also, we've got to get people on rapid transit, and you're going to do that by providing high quality, efficient service. And so that's got to be our end goal here. We've got to, and I also think this will help our housing problem. If we provide reliable, quick, pleasant transportation to people who are in the exurbs and in areas in and around the greater Boston area, it'll allow people to, not compete for the limited housing that's within the city of Boston or our near suburbs. It'll expand the opportunities and the job base that we rely upon in the greater Boston area. And that'll, I hope, drop some of the pressure on the housing stock in the area. So it really is a more holistic solution that we're looking for here.
And just for people like me that have a hard time getting their head around $9.5 billion, is that money? So I've been led to believe that the T share of federal money is going to run out after this coming fiscal year. Is any of this $9.5 billion available to the T?
It's up to the legislature. It's up
I
to the
see.
legislature. Yeah. So some of the money we provided is discretionary to the governor. Some is discretionary to mayors, and then there's a big portion there that is subject to the decision of the legislature. So they're grappling with that. There is currently a bill right now. I think they're calling it ARPA 2.0 or something like that. That the legislature is actually debating right now. It's in the budget. So they're grappling. I did meet with Speaker Mariano, and I met with a group of the senators too to talk about that and how some of that money might be allocated. But they're on the issue, and they're debating it. They understand the need out there, but they also know that there are competing needs within their individual communities as well.
And these would again be presumably one-time funds that they may plug a operating budget gap for a period of time, but it's not a long-run answer.
Well, it's one time in the sense that it's one time, multiple times within this 5-year period, but at the end of 5 years, that money is not going to continue, not in that form.
So are you like, and I don't mean to drag this on, but are you sort of, sometimes I sort of feel like the T had a big pot of money and everybody here couldn't get together and figure out the best way forward. They did restore service, but they've always seemed to know that there's going to be a problem looming. Would you have rather seen everybody get together when they had the money and there wasn't an urgency to it? But maybe you always need an urgency in politics. I don't know.
Well, yeah, that's sometimes we don't do something until we have a crisis. Yeah, there's that aspect of this, Bruce. I honestly think that under the circumstances, it was tough to predict when ridership would return and what they could rely on in terms of revenue. So I think they took $1 billion and put it on their some of the early money that came in and put it on operations just to continue what they were doing and maintaining services. So, I mean, I can second guess them on that, but back then I don't know if I could have anticipated what actually happened.
Sure.
I do appreciate the difficulty that they're faced with. I don't discount that, but I do believe that having these discussions and working it out, and look, we were getting cooperation from the unions to try to manage this thing. You know, we did have a lot of goodwill out there. I think people were acting in the best interest of the MBTA ridership in many respects, and that, you know, unfortunately, it took a crisis to make that happen as well.
Well, Congressman Stephen Lynch, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate that.
Good to be with you, Bruce. Thank you.
And to our listeners, we'll see you again next week. Thank you very much.